Workshop. I am Rob K., recovered alcoholic, sobriety date October 11, 2013. This workshop is facilitated by Tony R and Katie J. We will keep everybody muted during the workshop except for the facilitators. I hope everybody's got their big book, highlighter, a pen, and a piece of paper. Please note that Tony will take questions after the meeting, so write down your questions so you don't forget them. Any inappropriate conduct will not be tolerated, and you will be removed by one of the co-hosts. How we open this meeting is with the third step prayer, which is on page 63 of your big book. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Tony, it's all yours, brother.
Right on. Unmute.
Don't forget to unmute.
Don't forget to unmute. Repetition helps, eh? I'm a recovered alcoholic. My name's Tony. Sobriety date's April 8, 1989. Welcome. Exciting night. Happy Remembrance Day. I nearly said Memorial. Happy Remembrance Day to everybody. And then the freedoms we get to live. I said I just wanted to acknowledge that today. And really awesome because we're on chapter 6, in action. You know, it's kind of interesting how it works, and then it goes right into action, right? Like the action parts now, right? The beginning of the transition of change, right? We've experienced some of it, but then this is probably a pretty exciting step because this is, again, like the 4th step, one of those areas that's really misunderstood, right? And a lot of people, this is my experience, right? Because I spent 11 years in and out of AA beforehand. I've been through a couple treatment centers and all that other stuff. And then I've worked with a lot of people over almost 33 years. I've worked with thousands of people, right? Like the Big Book Study Workshop in Vancouver. We became one of the biggest, before the pandemic hit, one of the biggest workshops in Canada. We were getting over 100, 110, 120 people on a Friday night. And 80% of those were new people. And then we'd sponsor them through the process. And a lot of them were retreads, right? Like they just couldn't get sober. And a lot of people within our fellowship who were dealing with people that weren't getting sober in their groups would say, hey, I know a good group to bring you to. Right, and they drop them off at our group. Like we have people now who are really pillars in the community of Alcoholics Anonymous and service and all that, and helping others, and they go on to be shining lights of something greater than ourselves. Eh? And so one of the things is why is that? Because we carried this message, and they went through the processes outlined in this book. They had a new experience, right? Considering the previous experiences, so. You want to have a highlight for this. I'm getting my bearings here and a pen and a piece of paper. And we're going to start off swinging here. So if somebody was to ask you, because, you know, after 2 weeks, we're pretty much professionals about everything in AA, right? Anybody here, we have an opinion on everything. Just ask us, we know. You know, and what makes you say that? Well, how many people have been to a discussion meeting here where they have a discussion and we go at great lengths talking about things that we really don't have much experience with. But we think we have an understanding because we've heard somebody else share it, right? And we think it's about passing on information that we haven't experienced yet. Anybody been there? How many people here has talked about the 4th step before even ever doing it? Mm-hmm. How many people talked about the 3rd step? Or how many people here really came in AA and heard everybody else introduce themselves as an alcoholic, and you introduced yourself as an alcoholic? And if somebody was to walk up to you and say, well, what's an alcoholic? You'd get into all the consequences and unmanageability associated with drinking, right? And all those things don't make you an alcoholic, as we discovered going through this process. Isn't it interesting, right? And then you hear that there's 3 symptoms in alcoholism, and you hear all the isms and all the shit that you hear in meetings. Anybody? And you think it's true because there's more than one person talking about that, right? And then when you get into a big book study, somewhat like this or similar to this, that just stick with the information in the book, you have conflict with the people who are putting on that study. Nobody in this group, right? They must be wrong. How many people did the worksheets here?
Yep.
How many people looked for the answer you thought it said? Spend the whole day. I'm sure it's in here somewhere. Right? And then you, to actually put the answer it does say in there, it's really like pulling teeth with us sometimes, right? And there's actually a question in the sheets where you actually have to ask for help. Because the answer isn't necessarily in the book, it's a conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so the humility of asking for help is not our strong suit, is it? So then you get to see if your sponsee is really keen or not, because when they get to that part of the process, they're going to need to engage in conversation with you. Most of them don't and put in the answer they think it says. How many people has done that? Now, here's the good one, right? Here's the good one. You're going through the worksheet, your sponsor is going over it with you. How many people got upset with their sponsor for pointing out the incorrect answer? We're funny, right? Like, don't challenge my thinking. Don't tell me I'm wrong. And whatever you do, don't center me out, right? Anybody? But there's a big part to this thing that a lot of us kind of miss. So we just finished the 4-step hypothetically, right? And a lot of us have. And we're getting ready to do the 5th step. What would you say, real fast, the first answer that comes in your head, what's the purpose of the 5th step? Most of us will say what we heard in a meeting. Anybody? Most of us, well, the book says this. Most people don't, when they give an answer, most sponsors don't give an answer. Well, this is what the book says. Let me show you. Let's go to the book to find out the answer or the purpose of it. How many people had that sponsorship where they wouldn't take you through the book? They wouldn't take you to the book. They'd say their opinion or what they thought or what they got taught in treatment or somebody else's idea, right? And that's the kind of sponsorship I had for the first 11 years. Even in treatment, I didn't understand the purpose of the 5th. I thought it was just like a confession. And we'll find out a confession and doing step 5 is 2 different things. Even though they may have similar principles, there's really 2 different purposes to it, right? Because a lot of us do feel better kind of unloading the crap we're carrying. Anybody? But it doesn't teach you nothing. It just gives you some relief. It's like having an infection, right? Or a sliver, and you pop the sliver and the pus comes out, but the sliver's still there. And so it reforms again. It may sound kind of weird, but that's the only kind of thing I have. The problem's still there. You may have created some relief. It's like having a toothache. Anybody have a toothache here? Take a couple Tylenols, the pain go away, you think that the toothache's fixed. Anybody?
Yeah.
But it's not. And then it gets to a place where the nerve in the tooth actually dies. And then it goes to the second phase, which is an infection. And the infection could actually kill you, even though you're not feeling no pain associated with. The symptoms of the problem can continue to increase. I don't know, is that kind of my making sense here?
Yeah.
I'm tired today. It's the first day off in a while, so trying to get caught up where my feet are. So if someone was to ask you, hey, what's the purpose of the 5th step? What would you tell them? Right? Just kind of take a second and monitor what your thinking is in regards to that. It seemed like the 4th step. How many people remember people talking about the 4th step going, oh, boogeyman. It's like you go down that street and there's a clown holding a red balloon, like, oh, you're in trouble. It's down there, right? It's like the boogie. How many people have that impression about the 4th step?
Yep.
But when you actually do the 4th step, it's like having a shower. Right? It's like, wow, this is okay. Right? There was the resistance to it, and it's like a whole different experience. Right? Of the relief and the application of certain ideas and tapping into an inner resource. How many people found that? Mm-hmm. So we found the exercise was actually pretty enriching. Right? It was kind of like enlightening. It was kind of like, it was the game changer. The 4th step is the game changer to this whole process. Would we agree or disagree?
Absolutely agree.
And then afterwards, you think, this is the best thing I've really ever done. Going into it, it's like being dragged along, right? It's like being dragged along a dirt road, right? A gravel road, kicking and screaming, being dragged. But you had to because your life was on the line. Then afterwards, it's like, holy smoke, this wasn't that bad. It was actually, what a great experience. Now, if we could pass that on meetings, it would be a lot better. So the purpose of the fifth step, page 72. Let's get into that.
Okay. Recovered alcoholic. My name's Katie. Page 72, into action. Having made our personal inventory, what shall we do about it?
See, now what's after do about it? A question mark again. So is this where you pause and think, oh, what should I do about it? Should I go burn it now, or should I disregard it? It's not asking you to start thinking. That question mark isn't there really for you. It's going to answer itself. Because that's, well, now what do I do? Well, let us tell you. So do we understand the purpose of the question marks now?
Yeah.
Before, how many people thought it was actually asking you? Well, that would be a problem, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
If it stopped and asked your opinion, you're in trouble, right? Because your opinion is, I think that's good enough. I don't need to go any farther with this thing. Let's burn it. Let's hide it. Okay, go ahead. Let's go find a deaf person to do a fourth step with it.
We have been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator.
Okay, so we see the purpose of the fifth step now and the process thus far since making our decision. To get a new attitude and a new relationship, not to enrich our old attitude or ideas. That's why it doesn't tell you in step 2, hey, come up with your own idea. But you hear that in fellowship. How many people say that in fellowship? Come up with your own idea. Well, we see our ideas didn't work, did they? Remember when Bill was talking to Abby? Bill had an understanding of God. His understanding wasn't working. Remember that other guy who felt he was a good church member? But yet the needed power wasn't there. So when they explain this thing, our conception is, our understanding is, we've tapped into an inner resource of strength. All our members, not some of our members, right? Have tapped into an inner resource of strength. This thing that they talked about on page 55. Deep down within every man, woman, and child. That's our idea of this power that we need to get access to. What you call it is entirely your business. But when we talk at meetings, we talk in a general way about this source that we tapped into. Who tapped into? All of us, as we understand it. And some person says, oh, they put this in for this person. Oh, well, you know what? Maybe if this is divinely put together, it's put together beyond our understanding, right? So it's pretty cool. Go ahead.
We've been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator, and to discover the obstacles in our path.
Okay, ready? On your pen and paper, write down what you discovered as the obstacles in our path. To what? To this relationship, yes or no? Mm-hmm. Right? Because we see back on 64 the purpose of a fourth step, right? How many people remember that on page 64? What the purpose of the fourth step was, right? Though our decision was a vital and crucial step. What, Katie?
It could have little. I'm just doing it by memory. So hold on one second. 64?
Yep. Top of the page.
Though our decision was a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and to be rid of the things in ourselves which have been blocking us.
Blocking us. Circle that. So what is the things in ourselves that here, right, the obstacles in our path, are they the same things? Would you say, how many people say, yeah, they're the same things? Right? So what are those things? You got to follow the bouncing ball here, because what happens is people change it somewhere along the line. And when you change those things, you change the understanding of the whole process. So what happens is people start concentrating on the symptoms instead of the problem. Two different things. Right? So what's the problem? So we shall discover some of the common manifestations of what? Of the things that block us off. So everybody write those things down, what they are. So the fellowship will teach you selfish, inconsiderate, and dishonest. Those are not the things. Those are symptoms of the things. Those are not the things. Right? Selfish, that we think is the root of our troubles. Well, driven by 100 forms of fear. Driven. So what's driving the selfish, inconsiderate is the underlying stuff. What's the underlying stuff is my instincts. So what those things are, what do we look at? Resentments, fears, and conduct. Right? Anybody? These are the things that are blocking us off. These are the things that are poisoning us. Because if it was selfish, inconsiderate, and dishonesty, none of us would be sober, would we? Because those is part of the human condition. We just have it. A 6-year-old kid has that. We trained them to be more, loving, tolerant. You hear people say, oh, they should teach this in school. They do. Kindergarten. You missed that class. It's called sharing.
The glue.
Yeah, right? It's sharing. Participating, being nice, being thoughtful, all these things that don't serve us very well. 2 pieces of cake. Who wants the bigger piece of cake? It's a bit selfish, but at the time you think, the person goes, hey, why you always take the bigger piece? Did you want it? No, I would have left it for you. Then what are you complaining about? That's the way we are, right? Take the biggest piece. How many people sat in a restaurant, watch people bring the same food to somebody else that you ordered at the same table, and you see they have a bigger portion? How many people does that make them a little upset? So it's just part of the human condition, where those are the things that are not blocking me off. How many people found that interesting?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Back to 72. We have admitted certain defects. We have ascertained in a rough way what the trouble is. We have put our finger on the weak items in our personal inventory.
What are the weak items?
Resentment, fear.
Well, no. This is the interesting stuff, right? Those are the symptoms. Like, those are the blocks. But what are the weak items? So the weak items, how many people got their sheets here? The weak items is my self-esteem.
Okay.
My personal relationships. These things are causing the resentments and the fears. Because if I was spiritually okay in those areas, would I have a problem in my instincts? No. Then I wouldn't have my problem in my interpretation or reaction to life, would I? So the weak items is man, I didn't have a sex problem, but I had a self-esteem problem, a security problem. I didn't have a problem with stealing. I had a problem with ambitions and security. Because if I was secure in this area, would I feel the need to steal this? Or if I kept on stealing and I was okay in those areas, then I have a self-esteem issue. And if I didn't have that, then it would be a mental health issue. Do you see how you could break it down into that area? Mm-hmm. Anyways, I don't know. I found that very interesting, right? So when I looked at this, it's like I have these resentments, yes, and I have these fears. Why? Because of my instincts. They're out of whack, right? And what I'm trying to do is self-reliance. Self-reliance isn't working, so it's exhibited in what? Resentment, fear, conduct, trying to get all I can out of life. These things arise out of ourselves. Well, what's the creator of that? Self. Right? Any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. Trying to create security, trying to change people, places, and things. Why? Because I'm having fear in this area, so I want you to be the security that I don't have. So my reliance becomes on you. Well, then where does the problem happen? Well, if I know that, then I could go with my partner and people for the right idea in the in the relationships. I said, you know what? I have a couple problems in this area. I'm working through it with God, but just so you're aware of it, I may step on your toes every once in a while. And if we could both be aware of this thing, realize it's not you, it's me, then we'll both be okay. Does that kind of make sense? I already know this now. Where did I learn this? In my 4th step. Isn't it interesting? So what I've discovered here, I've done 3/4 of my inventory. I've done 3/4, of the 5th step. I've admitted to myself and God. I swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about myself. Right? I know these things now based on my inventory. What's the only part of the process left? I've done 3/4 of it, is the sharing of it with another human being. There's where the resistance comes. Anybody? Because now, like, I don't like seeing me in the light. I see me in this 4-step, but we think nobody else sees it. You're the last one to know what everybody else already knows. Right? Yeah, that's why you don't like it, because you become aware everybody else already knows. Right? Anybody? Okay.
Okay, we have put our finger on the weak items in our personal inventory. Now these are about to be cast out. This requires action on our part, which when completed will mean that we have admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our defects.
And what's the exact natures of our defects? What's the defects that's causing us all our problems? It's twofold. The resentments let me know that there's an underlying problem. Where's the underlying problem? In my instincts. My instincts let me know that I'm the one creating it based on self-will. It creates a defect. What's a defect? Something that happened in the past that's determining how I think and feel today. How many people have that? Mm-hmm. This happened to me back then. The best way I know how to say it is, if I had a bad experience with police, which I have, would I be paranoid and have anxiety every time I've seen police? Yep. Who created that? I did. Because if I wasn't doing what I was doing, you know how many times the police have bothered me since I've been sober? Other than for my warrants? 0. Right? Interesting. Kind of wow. Wow, it's deep. But you see how something from the past would affect today. If my experiences in the past were bad relationships or bad employers that I created, what would be my anticipation of people, places, things today? I'd have problems with everybody, wouldn't I?
Yeah.
And would I have an anxiety-based life because my thinking's whacked? So we see how it all goes back to my instincts and self-propulsion. Interesting, right? So if God was present in these areas, would I have the same problem?
No.
Can I fix these problems that I discussed in my 4-step? I can't. But my relationship can. So I see it start being, as we go through this, especially in 11, and this is where the idea comes from in 4:17, but most people miss it, that nothing happens in God's world by mistake, meaning I participate in 90% of the stuff that's happening in my life based on my thinking. Anybody? How many people have been in conflict with themselves and involve other people? Right? So the acceptance thing that they talk about goes with the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity. Well, I can't have serenity when I'm driven by self, can I? So I got to bring that prayer in to create calmness. Right? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. So that means I have to have the ability to be able to assess. Courage to change the things I can. And the wisdom to know the difference, which is the essence of step 11. But I need this process in order to do that. Because if I'm being driven, I don't make good decisions, do I? How many people are able to steer an uncontrollable car, right? You just get out of the way. So here it's really good. It's a game changer. Okay, go ahead.
This brings us to the 5th step in the program of recovery mentioned in the preceding chapter. This is perhaps difficult, especially discussing our defects with another person.
Defects? What defects? The resentments, the fears and conducts. Those things. Who wants to talk? No, can I just say I'm selfish, inconsiderate, and dishonest? Yeah, but those are not the things that are causing our problems, are they? those are the vehicles. They're not the problem. The problem is those resentments, based on those people and the harms and conduct. Anybody? I don't want to discuss those things. I don't want to discuss how I try to create self-esteem or ambitions or security. I don't want to discuss the things I did and having to secure those areas and the people I hurt and the things that I had no other kind of option than to do what I did. It's not like I had a different option. That's what I'm looking at. I created this thing where there was no other option for me to do but what I was doing. And then the collateral damage that happened as a result of that. That's why they say perhaps there's a better way. And what would we do in that same situation? I wouldn't live that way anymore. Why? Because I have an alternative way of living. I'm not driven by those things that caused all my problems. Anybody? Pretty cool stuff, right?
Yep.
Go ahead.
We think we have done well enough in admitting these things to ourselves.
Anybody? How many people thinking about stuff right now they're never going to tell anybody? You see how fast we go to that story? We're not even listening anymore. Here's how it looks like. So you guys know, I've been doing this a long time. Here's how it looks when we start it. Then we go. we see how when self takes over, we withdraw. And we go back and we create the anxiety and we're locked in that thinking. That's the difficulties and the bondage of self. There's nothing happening right now. But yet we go back to self-preservation. What are we trying to protect? We're trying to save our ass and our face. Anybody? We're trying to change the story. No, you need to be honest about the story. Not with everybody. Well, then with who? That's what they're going to get into.
There's doubt about that. In actual practice, we usually find a solitary self-appraisal insufficient. Many of us thought it necessary to go much further.
That's interesting. They use that a couple times in this book. But we must go further. Mm-hmm. Right? They'll say it again later. Okay, go ahead.
We will be more reconciled to discussing ourselves with another person when we see good reasons why we should do so.
Well, now they're going to tell us. Right?
The best reason first. If we skip this vital step, we may not overcome drinking.
Why? Why?
Yeah.
Because the blocks are still there. We haven't opened the channels. We're still driven by self-preservation. Right? So how much humility is there?
None.
So then there's another block, right? Right? They talk about, did not these feelings, after all, these feelings, right, cut us off, right? Remember that? Did not these feelings determine our outcome? They use that a couple times, right? These feelings, they use it on page 54, and then they used it on page 66. Right? These feelings, did not these feelings cut us off from the sunlight of the Spirit? So when we think about these things that we don't want to share, how many people does it create a bit of anxiety, a bit of fear? See what happens to the inside when you look at your thinking and your body's reacting to your thinking? How many people felt that in regards to this? Most people would miss that. See how self takes over here? Now, if I go to start to reason with that, I'll reinforce that idea. Anybody? Mm-hmm. Here they're saying, breathe, pray, and let's look at this. Right? That's why they're starting off with the first thing first, is you're not going to overcome drinking. And if you're still battling alcoholism, you're going to lose. Right? So we made a decision to go through this, to have this awakening, this process, to have this experience, so I could obtain this reprieve that I see the people before me and my sponsor and the people I'm walking with are enjoying. So what am I going to save here? My ass or my face? Right? And it looks like here that says, well, if you're going to save your face, you're going to lose your ass. And if you're going to save your ass, then we got to, let's continue reading.
Yeah. Time after time, newcomers have tried to keep to themselves certain facts about their lives.
Anybody? I'm not going to talk about this because I'm embarrassed. I can't believe I did what I did back then. But I didn't know it any better back then. I did the best I could back then. So I'm trying to analyze myself today. I'm judging myself what I understand today, understanding with what I did back then. That's not the point of this thing. The point is I need to be free of these things. And I don't need to tell everybody. I need to explain it to one person. Why did I do this? Because of my self-esteem, my security, right? My instincts were out of whack. My sex instinct, right? Anybody, how many people here? That's why I did those things.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do those things, but I was driven to do those things. I couldn't do anything else with what I did. And it's just like those that hurt me. I was collateral damage, and then I seen how I hurt others were collateral damage. It wasn't personal. If you just happened to be there, you would have the same experience as the person that I want to mend to. So it doesn't matter if it was Kelly, Brenda, or Tammy. They would have the same outcome. Does that kind of make sense? Doesn't matter if it was Bill, Sam, or Brian. Doesn't matter that guy in the bar, right? That I did those things to those people. Just collateral damage. The harms that I did. It wasn't personal. You just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. And so it's kind of like, I don't want to discuss those things. But when I discussed them back then, it'd bring up certain emotions. Anybody have thinking about stuff now that brings up certain emotions or this? How long do you want to carry that for? It's festering. It's on your spirit. It's attached to you. And it's something that you should be free of a long time ago. Mm-hmm. Right? Like if you went swimming in a beautiful lake and you came out of the lake and you thought, what a great experience. And then you see an leech stuck to your arm. Would you keep it there or you get rid of it? But it'd be scary at first until someone said, hey, this is how you get rid of it. Just like this. Wow. And then you look at the water and you think, I'm never going back in there again. Anybody? Because I'm like that. I'm talking about. I look at the water. I'll rob myself of a small little thing that really did nothing to continue having an experience. And this is like our fifth step. I want to be free of all that stuff, right? Okay, go ahead.
Trying to avoid this humbling experience, they have turned to easier methods.
Okay, ready? What did they call this experience? Humbling. Humbling and humility to me mean the same thing. I may be wrong, but to me they mean the same thing.
Yeah.
Humility to me means I understand the need of something. To humble myself to ask is not my strong suit. Humility is the acknowledgement of needing something. Right? The humility of understanding. If I don't have that, but to humbly ask for it. Now that's something different. That's not our strong suit, is it? How many people got a t-shirt that they won second place in the humility contest, right? So, I mean, it's not our strong suit, is it?
No.
Would you like something to eat? I haven't eaten in 2 days. No, that's okay. Would you like some help? No, I'm all right. I'll just drag this broken leg along with me, right? Like, we're just kind of like that, aren't we?
Yeah.
And it's not our strong suit. I don't know why. We could write a whole book on it. But obviously, trying to avoid this humbling experience. So what am I, for lack of better words, I don't define ego or whatever, but the human condition says self-preservation. This says you need to reveal you in order to find freedom. The humility is, yeah, you know what? I already know these things. God knows these things, but I need to explain it to another human being. And if you have anxiety, that's natural, isn't it?
Yeah.
You hear people say, oh, you can't have fear and faith in the same house. Well, obviously you're not alcoholic then. Because we have more than a couple emotions on the same bus going the same way. I could go from laughing to crying all in the same episode. Back when I was with anybody, I mean, I'm the only guy when I served out, I could watch a comedy and start crying because I'm lonely, right? Like, just totally whacked. When they say, when they say we're miracles of mental health, they weren't joking. It usually takes years to bring about this way of life. To what? To eliminate the twisted thinking. Like, we're whacked. That's why we're the only group of people that smile at each other when we tell each other stories. Other people, that's how you tell if you're one of us or not. You tell each other stories, we move in and say, oh yeah, me too. The normal people go, whoa, they distance themselves from you. You might be alone for a little while, but we'll find you. Okay, go ahead. Right, Katie? Go ahead.
That's right. Almost invariably, they got drunk. Having persevered with the rest of the program, they wondered why they fell. We think the reason is that they never completed their house cleaning.
So that's one part. Never completed their house cleaning.
Mm-hmm. They took inventory all right, but hung on to some of the worst items in stock.
How many people done a 4-step in the past and left out all the good, shared the bullshit, made yourself look not that bad, and hung on to the worst items in stock? And you notice when you left the 5th step that you were still thinking about those things? This is my thing, is God's trying to say, hey, I'm trying to be with you, help you, but you need to do your part in order for me to do my part. I can't override your free will. I've done the best I can this far. I've got you this far, but you need to participate in the saving of your own life. You made a decision to do this thing. I'm not making you do it. I didn't punish you. You're punishing you. I'm here to work with you to save you from you.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not doing these things to you. I've never done these things to you. I'm here to help you, but will you kind of get involved with me? Right? Because I need you to commit to this. Be willing to go to any lengths means I'm here for you, but unless you grab my hand, I can't help you because I'm not getting in the water with you. I mean, it kind of may sound weird, but I'll carry you and I'll make sure there's somebody all along the shoreline that could pull you in, but you got to reach out. You got to do your part. That's what this is kind of saying. Go ahead.
They only thought they had lost their egoism and fear.
Underline this. A lot of people say, well, what's the purpose of the 5th step? This is it. The first, they do the introduction, have a new relationship and a new, right?
Yep. They only thought they had lost their egoism and fear.
So this is the process, the pivoting point. All the rest is just different ways on how to do it. But this is the purpose of the 5th. Is the moving from the thinking to the experience. Does that kind of make sense? Because what are we struggling with now? We're struggling with our thinking in regards to this process. Anybody? They're saying that. They're saying you're in trouble. So what's the purpose of the process? What's the whole point of the exercise? It's like when you lift weights, the purpose of the exercise is to get muscle or stuff in this area, right? So the actual lifting of it is what creates that, the transition. Does that kind of make sense? It's like swimming. You got to move your arms. Move your feet. You got to learn how to do buoyancy. Anybody?
Yeah.
You ever watch somebody who don't try to get buoyant or move their arms and their feet? What happens to them? They drown. Right? So this is the buoyancy. Move your arms and your legs. It doesn't make sense. Gas for air. Like, this is the whole point of it. And once you get through this exercise, all the rest will start to flow. And let's do that. They took stock all right. Go ahead.
They took inventory all right, but they hung on to some of the worst items in stock. They only thought they had lost their egoism and fear.
So the egotism and fear. This is the first time they use the word. Self-preservation, ego, edging God out, all that manner. But it's the protection of self. Ego. Ego is that part that talks to you. Ego is the only part that thinks it will live after it kills you. It's the only part that thinks you'll go on living after it kills you. Anybody? How many people, you know that chatter? I don't need them. I don't need this. I don't need anyone. And then you create your own isolation. You create your own misery. And then you go, God, why are you doing this to me? Right? Because and God says, this is okay. You can blame me. I'm okay with that. But now that we're here, you know why. Right? And so let's create the story of Alcoholics Anonymous in your life. Let's start working toward a new story. You're already starting to have a new experience. Anybody through this process? You're the beginning a new experience. Now let's create a new story. Let's create a new novel. Let's create the second edition here, like in your life. Let's create a new direction. Pretty cool stuff. Okay, go ahead. The sequel. Go. Okay.
They only thought they had humbled themselves, but they had not learned enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty in the sense we find it necessary.
That's it. That's the combination to this whole thing. So the first thing we need to obtain in order to get this is what? Humility. Well, humility for the need of God. What's the first thing that goes away before our sobriety goes? Humility. And the humbling. So the humility and the humbling kind of goes hand in hand. Because we could have humility and then ego squashes that where we don't humble ourselves. Anybody? Because when I have the humility, like in my sobriety in the last 32 years, there's one thing I've never denounced, and that was the need of God. I'll wipe out 1,000 people off my Facebook thing. I don't need nobody or nothing. I won't answer my phone. I'll go into a tantrum created by self. Nobody here, right? And then I'll hear that voice inside of praying, and I'll go like I don't know how else to say it, like my dog Cosmo when he's done something wrong, and he'll still approach me because he knows he needs me in order. His survival is dependent on his relationship with me. He knows that. Anybody own a dog, they know that. A dog knows that. My dog will humble himself by rolling on his back and submitting to me. I need to kind of do that with inside of myself in regards to my relationship. It may sound kind of weird, but I need to acknowledge this thing that will see me dead unless it's corrected or altered. And this is the recipe. I found that really cool. Anybody?
Very cool.
Because this is within you now. Only you know the truth about you. You could, because most alcoholics lead a double life. There's what you present and then there's what's going on. How many people would like those two things to be the same thing?
Yep.
This is the road to that, right? And it all starts with that humility, right? And it's wild. I mean, when I went through this, and I went and did my fifth with this guy, that when I first met him, I looked at him and I thought, I won't tell you what I thought. And same with the other two guys he was walking with in AA. Those little group of people saved my life. The one guy showed me how to do a fourth. How to go through this process. The other guy conned me into a big book study. And the other guy did my fifth step with me. And as I was doing my fifth with him, I was going through at 100 miles an hour. I was sweating. And he was cooking like nothing, like it was no big deal. He didn't stop me and go, this is the child within, and you have abandonment issues. And I would have told him, go fuck yourself. Who would have done that? Because I was very volatile. Sorry, I swore. I can't believe I did that. Yeah, I can. We're keeping it real here. I was very volatile because what I had to have was a connection with God here. I had to open those channels. Because a mere code and all that stuff never worked for me. I know where I came from. I knew my lifestyle. None of that ever created any healing by going back and researching it. Enough trauma for 3 people. What I needed was this connection with this power that enabled me to live comfortably within my own skin, regardless of what happened to me in the past. I needed to be free of those things. And so the humility was, I'm going to tell you everything. And I told him everything. And sometimes when he seen me struggle with the overwhelming emotion, he would stop me and says, Anybody in that situation would have did the same thing, Tony. When that happened, you were a kid, right? You didn't know any better. Most kids do that, or most kids go through that. It's okay, let's move on. That's not you anymore, and I'd move on. The guy stuck to the path of this book, and when we do a fifth, we have a certain responsibility to the people we do a fifth with too. And what's that? Is to hear. Not to be a psychologist, not to be a social worker, not to do a family tree of origin, not to put my shit on them. It's just to hear, to be a witness of what? Of the humility of them approaching us with the biggest struggle of their life is discussing themselves with another human being. And what a gift that is, to somebody to witness that or to be a witness of that. Mm-hmm. Right? We're his agents, right? And these guys saved my life by doing that. Because what's the purpose of the fourth step? What's my part of this exercise? Notice it didn't rediscover new things. Did it say that in the fifth step? To rediscover new things, to have somebody point out, well, it's actually abandonment issues, the child within issues is these issues that you have, and go here, go there. No, it's to discover the obstacles about the truth, about the stock and trade, the things that block me off from this source, and to go through this exercise. What exercise? Read that again. This is the whole purpose of the fifth step, is to be a witness of this. I'm going to finish this, because if you looked at my first fourth step, you'd wonder how I'm still sober. But what I exhibited from the first time I made a decision was these things. These things. What things? Go ahead.
But they had not learned enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty, in the sense we find it necessary, until they told someone else all their life story.
So a lot of people say, oh, my life story. Well, no, right? It's you're telling your story along their fourth step. You're filling in the blanks. Well, you know, this happened with this person on my resentments. I'm filling in all the blanks. What's the story around that? Right? This is inserts. Anybody ever watch those where you look up a movie and then you hit the highlights of the movie, right? A trailer. Mm-hmm. Anybody? So my fourth step's like a trailer. It's just some highlights. And then I'm going to be the narrator of my story when I'm telling it. So I look down and these are the scenes in the story of my life. And when I'm sharing it, I'm letting someone know the whole story now. I'm filling it in. And his job or her job or their job is not to rewrite the script for me. Is allow me to practice this humility, fearlessness, and honesty on how I see things. And their job is to maybe help navigate me through it, but to encourage me to go on and not to be affected by it. It's really, really amazing stuff, this thing. It's really amazing stuff because it's a game changer. This is the game changer. Because if we don't go on, we work toward our own demise. If we hang on to anything, we're like a boat with the anchor still in the water. Right? And so we're trying to navigate through life, but we have all these things in the water still is drudging along the bottom, and the engine's working. Here's the cutting of the rest of those things. So we could start living life the way we're meant to. And compartmentalize the things that don't give way, and we'll look at that later, right? But this is amazing. When you think about how many people struggled with this. And the worst items, and so what happens is there's freedom on the other side of that. Because if there wasn't, none of us would be here. What's the difference between your experience and our experience is this experience? What? Learned enough humility, fearlessness, and honesty. And in the sense, what? We find it necessary.
Yep. Until they told someone else all their life story. More than most people, the alcoholic leads a double life.
No! Right. What it means
He
a
is
double
very-
life is, here's, a lot of people don't know, a lot of people think by day, I'm wearing a suit and at night I'm a gangster. That's not what they're talking about. A double life is you present this one person, but inside of you, you're filled with guilt, shame, and remorse. That thing that talks to you, you piece of shit. Can't believe you did that. What's the matter with you? You fucking talks shit to you all day, and you're like, I'd like to introduce you to my best friend, but we're pretending he's not here today. And that shit that talks to you. Anybody have that part of their brain that talks shit to them? You don't tell nobody that, do you? You're like, I have a bit of problems, but every now and then I'm a bit in conflict with myself. Because you're used to that neighborhood. But if your thinking was beside you on one of those display boards, next time you're sharing or talking to somebody, and your thinking was all on a display board beside you, how many people would go anywhere? I wouldn't even have a mirror in my place so I can see it, right? I could hardly just, like, anybody? That's what you mean, double life. So what do you mean? You mean after I go, yeah. Very seldom do I talk shit to myself. Very seldom is there anything that cripples me, or you know what I mean, that holds me hostage within my own thinking. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know how to describe it, but once you experience it, it's pretty wild. And then when you have these things come up, then you go back through the recipe again for the removal of it, right? What is the removal of it is my connection to source. Because when these things start coming back, that means self is showing up. That means my instincts are starting to run amok here. Yes? No?
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Okay, go ahead.
He is very much the actor. To the outer world, he presents his stage character. This is the one he likes his fellows to see. He wants to enjoy a certain reputation, but knows in his heart he doesn't deserve it. The inconsistency is made worse by the things he does on his sprees.
Or sober. Like, how many people realize you don't even be drinking to do stupid shit? How many people's done really embarrassing shit here sober? Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's a new generation, but I don't know if Bill was getting that on us, but Bill was engaged in some shady shit that he didn't want the world to know, but we know about it now. Sober. Right? Mm-hmm. So all these everybody has it. Certain flaws and defects, the things that drive us to create a sense of happiness, ease, and comfort. Regardless, nobody's without, is like, nobody here can throw stones in the glass house. Why don't you throw stones in the glass house? Because the shards of glass land back on us. It's like there was an old parable. He who was out sin cast the first stone. That's kind of like we all have problems. But how do I find a way to live with these problems where they don't determine my present or my future? How many people would like some of that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it. This is it, right? So, you know what? So I don't live so much of a double life. Some days there's only me. Some days there's more than me. Anybody? Some days there's a few of my personalities that show up. And they're in struggle for who's going to be in charge today. And alone, I can't overpower them because they take over my personality. And then afterwards, there's regret, remorse, and self-pity. Anybody? And self-loathing. But with God, those don't have to be the thing anymore. So I hate to break it to you, but you're always going to have the human dilemma. And we're always going to be kind of an example of self-will run riot. Yay! Make the way. But to the degree varies. That's why the second half talks about the principles we have set down are guides to progress. That's why later on, if you've read through this book as it asked you to do, and now we're going through it, you would have read that it takes years to bring about this way of life. Twisted thinking don't vanish overnight. Sometimes not even after 32 years. but Eamon's pretty close. But I have 2 weeks more than him. I got to mention it every time I see him, and he loves it. He's great. We have some great conversations about the human perplexity and our thing and the things why we still need God. Because imagine if we ever got to a place that we didn't need God. Why is it a daily reprieve? Right? Isn't it interesting? Every day we must seek this path. Otherwise, we show up and we're instinct-based people trying to have a spiritual experience or a spiritual way of living. This is great. I don't know why I went there, but there you go. Okay.
Coming to his senses, he is revolted at certain episodes he vaguely remembers.
And a lot of us remember. He's being nice. The problem is we remember. It's the episodes we don't remember. We don't give a shit. Vaguely remember. Okay, I can live with vaguely. As long as nobody else tells me the truth. And I don't see those people anymore. But it's the ones we see consistently. And they know. They know. Remember that embarrassment? They know. And every time you see them, it's kind of like, they know. But then after doing this, you don't care they know. You've made amends and everything's cool and you're at peace, right? Okay, go ahead.
These memories are a nightmare. He trembles to think someone might have observed him.
That's weird, because 20 years later, you can still have that thought and that idea of something that happened 20 years ago. And it's like you're there and you get that. Anybody? The power that shit has. And here they're saying, well, do you want to be free of it? No, I think I'd rather hang on to it, save my face instead of my ass. Right? And then when you go through it, you know what I love? Because the guys who are the people who do the fifth step with me, they kind of, is the worst one you ever heard? And I said, oh, you're finished already? It's like I always say, no, it's not the worst I've ever heard. And they're kind of like shocked. And I said, you're a garden average alcoholic. Like you've done the same shit that most of us have done. Now, if you want to hear a fifth, let me tell you mine. No, just... Then I tell bits of my story in a general way and people stop talking to me. Right? So, I mean, guy's crazy. Okay, go ahead. Well, I'm okay with it.
As fast as he can, he pushes these memories far inside himself.
And with that is all the energy attached to it. As we were speaking here today, how many people had reoccurring thoughts of past episodes? How many people got locked, didn't realize it? We were talking, and then you came to in the middle of a thought or an episode connected to the past. How many people? Come on, let's get honest here. That way other people see you're not alone. They're not alone in this. And you didn't go there, did you? You took you there. And you became conscious of you being there. How many episodes, days, and moments? They talk about that we wasted being hostage to these things. Right? And they talk about it. It's pretty wild how this book is put together when you kind of look at the recipe on page 66 here. Right? It's pretty wild what they talk about here on page 66. Because this is the recipe that we're learning through the book to be free of all these things. Right? To the precise extent that we permit these. Right now we see them, or we can sidestep it and get out of it, right? They talk about it. Here, it is let's do that. Page 66. It is plain.
It is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. To the precise extent that we permit these, do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile.
So, Rick, see? Hours that might have been worthwhile. You have no say in this thing before this process of you being held hostage to you. It was kind of like you got to be aware, like, holy shit, yeah, you know what? I just went there and I didn't know I was going there and I was in the middle of this thought and I was being held emotionally captive in this situation. Anybody? It's not like, hey, I'm going to this channel and I'm going to turn it on and I'm going to watch this episode. I'm in the episode. And you become aware of it. and how long I was in that episode for. Well, it's interesting because then when we become aware of that, most of us go to another episode. And it gets worse and worse. It's pushed down. And because what happens is you open the door and all that stuff is bubbling up, eh? And you're trying to get the trap door closed on it and you're trying to get that handle on it again. Here's they're saying, let's clean that room out. You already got a light in there, right? You already brought God in there the first time when you did your fourth, right? Let's empty that room out now by doing your fifth. And that means every time you go by that room, God's already been there. You don't have to worry about that room anymore. There's a candle there in that dark, what used to be a dark, gloomy dungeon. Is like, this is, I'm a very visual person. This is how it was explained. Like my experience when I think about this is there was the life I wanted, but the tower I lived in also went up where I had a good view, but it also went below the ground. And as I started going down the concrete or the staircase in there, you remember those old towers you see? And then you start seeing the water seep out and then the green moss. And as you went further down, got more slippery and more darker. And the stones and everything started turning black. And then the web, like all these doors would have these little hatches on it. And it'd be memories of my past. And the farther down I went, the more I got locked in it. And so the fourth step was like opening these doors. Right? And prayer was like putting candles in those rooms. And as the more the candles stayed there, it started taking care of all that guck on the walls and all. It started drying. It started making that room not so unbearable. And now when I went through that place or go back to that place, all those rooms are lit up now. There's no dark crannies from the past. There's no dark dungeon doors that I have to sneak by. I'm at peace with everything. I don't know if that kind of makes sense. That visual makes sense, but it really made sense to me, right? And that's the fifth step. And some of those rooms now is the fifth step is where I light the candle that's already there. And what's the candle? That's God's presence. And me admitting it to another human being will create the spark or the release of that stuff that's holding me back. Right? So it's pretty wild. When I finished my fifth, this process, it was the beginning of a spiritual experience for me. And I'll get into more of that last week, but next week, this was the game changer. This was something that I'll try to explain in a way that you really can't explain until you experience it. When you experience, I go, yeah, I know what you're talking about, because I've had the same experience, right? And that's the whole point of this game. So, I mean, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Read through this. We're going to hit some highlights here. Why don't we read a bit more, and then we'll kind of finish off here. Go ahead.
66?
No, on back to 73.
Okay. Sorry, these memories are a nightmare. He trembles to think someone might have observed him. As fast as he can, he pushes these memories far inside himself. He hopes they will never see the light of day.
True. Even now, right?
Yeah. He is under constant fear and tension. That makes for more drinking. Right?
Because we cut ourselves off. It's not the behavior. Oh, these things are causing me to drink. What it is alcohol, the solution hasn't taken place sufficient enough to be recovered from alcoholism. Right? So these things are cutting me off from the sunlight of the spirit, and the insanity returns. So this makes for more drinking. Because the insanity keeps coming back. I don't want to drink, do I?
No.
But I keep drinking. Why? Because I suffer from an illness that needs a spiritual solution. What am I applying the spiritual solution to is to me. But in order to formulate that recipe, I need to be willing to do these things at the top of the page. Humility, fearlessness, and honesty. The removal of these blocks. Because what am I trying to do? Having made a personal inventory, what shall we do about it? We've been trying to get a new attitude, new relationship, and to discover the obstacles in our path. So we see that as I'm speaking and reading this, how many people see those obstacles and those things coming up in yourself?
Yeah.
How do you know if you're free of this? Would be the problem then. So what they talk about here is, this is the basis of our problem. This is what the whole thing, psychologist. Let's go here.
Bottom paragraph. Psychologists are inclined to agree with us. We've spent thousands of dollars for examinations. We know but few instances where we have given these doctors a fair break. We have seldom told them the whole truth, nor have we followed their advice.
You know why we seldom tell them the whole truth? Because we don't even know what the whole truth is. Like, it takes the 4 step to see how full of shit you really are. I thought honesty was my biggest quality. I thought I was the most honest person I met till I did the 4 step. And then I realized, why was I so delusional or dishonest to me? It's because I wouldn't be able to live with the truth of me. So I had to create this illusion of self to live comfortably within my own skin. But I didn't know I was doing that. So what I was telling people was the version of me that I understood as me. Well, every once in a while you'd catch me at a low point. Anybody here? Where I'd get a glimpse of me and I'd hardly stand it. A moment of clarity. And then it'd be another drink, or I'd seek some help. Or hopefully have a couple more drinks where that feeling, where that understanding would go away. Anybody like that here? We have a full picture of yourself, and you can hardly see. It's almost numbing. How would you tell these psychologists the truth when you don't know the truth yourself? Well, what I mean by, we know what happened, or we know the story, but the truth, right? So, what do I mean by here? So, how many people remember the first time they got in trouble, or the first time they got embarrassed through drinking? I remember the first time. I was 15. I'm lying downstairs, and I hear everybody above me upstairs. And the night before, I was puking. I made an asshole of myself. And some people witnessed it. And I'm lying there, and I get that knot in my stomach. How many people remember that? And you remember what happened. And you got to go face those people. But you don't want to go face those people. How many people have been there?
Yep.
So, but you're too big to crawl out the window in the basement. So you got to go fit. There's nowhere else. You got to go up the stairs, right? You got to go face them. So a part of you goes, hold it a second. Relax, Tony. And you listen to that narrator. Says, let's go over the story again. You go, okay. You go over the story again and you change it a bit. I'm still a little uncomfortable with the story. He says, well, let's go over it again. And you say, my buddy, my new friend. Creating the delusion sufficient enough for me to feel comfortable with the actions I took the night before, making it to a place where it was somebody else's fault, funny or ignorable. Sometimes I have to go through the story 4 times before it becomes palatable. Anybody here? Or to push it way down inside and hopefully everybody forgets about it by next Friday. Or time to find new friends in a new bar. Time to move, time to quit the job, time to find a new girlfriend.
Yeah.
So we don't make decisions, do we? We're living our lives based on alternatives. If I stay, can I face this? Nope, time to move. So I think I'm making decisions, but I would be comfortable with my life in that bar, doing my thing without any consequences. I'd still be sitting there if there were no consequences. Anybody? Mm-hmm. Living that delusion. But the only problem with the delusion is called moments of reality. Holy shit. And now we see ourselves as everybody else sees us. Right? That's what the 4 step does. It's not telling me what I used to be. It tells me what I am like on a self-based, on a non-spiritual basis. So now I see why I couldn't be honest with all those people, because I didn't know what honesty was at the level necessary that they're talking about based on the discovery of the 4 step. Am I alone in that, or how many people? Right? It's kind of like, wow. But now it's pretty cool. Okay, go on.
Unwilling to be honest with these sympathetic men, we were honest with no one else. Small
including
wonder,
ourselves.
Yeah. Small wonder many in the medical profession have a low opinion of alcoholics and their chance for recovery.
And the people around us. How many people around you have been telling you shit about you that you don't believe? No. And you defend. And you start thinking they're the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you come to the realization that, oh my God, there's a song like, you've been right all along. It's like, I don't want to see life how you people see life. I want to see life how I see it. Don't interrupt my delusion. But the beauty is when you start seeing it as everybody else around you sees it, then you could start working toward the correction of it. But until you do that, you're locked in the delusion of your life as you're living it, and it takes episode pain after pain after pain to get your attention sufficient enough for you to be willing to do something about it. That means the pain of your existence has got to be greater than the pain you're running from before you'll do anything. Am I alone in that? How many people would do this shit if you could stay ahead of yourself?
No way.
No, are you kidding? That's why it says most of us have been unwilling to do this. Well, why are you doing it? Well, because it's either save my face or save my ass. One of them's got to go.
Yeah.
Right? And I kind of realize that there's a part of me that thinks it will go on living after it kills me, but it's not. It's over. It's not a dress rehearsal. Right? So I'm going to participate in the saving of my own life, and I'm going to swallow and digest some big chunks of truth. It's not like I don't know the shit I've done. How many people on the 4-step go, oh my God, I didn't realize? Yeah, you did. There's nothing new on my 4-step except the discovery of how much of an asshole I really was. Mm-hmm. But I knew all that shit I did. Anybody? How many times did you think about that stuff before you put it down on the 4-step? Years. Let's look at this shit pile again. Okay. Let's grab a spoon, stir it around a bit. Oh, that stinks. Yeah, let's put it away. Let's get the other pile. We go from pile to pile to pile. Anybody? I don't know why I'm feeling good. Okay. The beauty about this stuff is when you see the shit pile now, you got to realize there's a pony somewhere. No, sorry. Okay, sorry. I don't know where I go. You're supposed to reel me in. Go ahead.
I don't know. Here we go. We must be entirely honest with somebody if we expect to live long or happily in this world.
Underline that.
Yeah.
Right? You better get honest with someone. Didn't say everybody. Didn't mean that the next meeting you go to, you're going to stand at the podium and do your... Right? That's not what it's saying. One person. Find one person, to be honest with you. And sometimes they'll recommend 2 people. Like me, I did 90% of my 5th step with one person because there's still a statute of limitation on something. And other things there was no limitation on, I shared with my brother. That's it. Right? And so these people know everything, no secrets no more. Okay, go ahead.
Rightly and naturally, we think well before we choose the person or persons with whom to take this intimate and confidential step.
I chose persons, right? And I'll tell you why. Go ahead.
Those of us belonging to a religious denomination, which requires confession, must, and of course will want to go to the properly appointed authority, whose duty is to receive it. You got to remember when the book was written, there wasn't a lot of the available people that we have now, like through good sponsorship, right, and stuff like that, and psychologists and so there's a lot of means available to us. Go ahead. Though we have no religious connection, we may still do well to talk with somebody ordained or by an established religion. We often find such a person quick to see and understand our problem.
There we go. Quick to see and understand our problem. So we're explaining to them what we're doing and why. Right? Quick to see and not change our mind on it. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Of course, we sometimes encounter people who do not understand alcoholics. If we cannot or would rather not do this, we search our acquaintance for a closed-mouthed, understanding friend. Perhaps our doctor or psychologist will be the...
So, ready? How would you know if you have a closed-mouthed friend? Listen to them. If they're talking shit about other people, guess who they're talking about when you leave the room? They're talking shit about you. Now, there's a difference when I go, hey, I had a sponsee, and they went through this, and I know you don't know them. There's no, so that's different than, hey, you remember Brian, or remember Susie, you remember Kim, and I start divulging private information. That's not a closed mouth friend. If you have a sponsor talking shit about their other sponsees to you, don't tell them your fifth step. They'll use it against you. Right? It's just one of those things that I learned in sobriety, right? Be careful who you share this stuff with. And your greatest asset, how many, ready? Here, let's find out where we're at. On your pen and paper, write down your greatest asset for finding somebody to do a fifth step with. Some people think this is entrapment. I see some of you smiling here. He's walking me down the path again, isn't he? It's one of those trick questions. It's going to be complicated. Our greatest asset is what? Prayer. If we're trusting and relying on God, then God, can you direct me in the path for someone to do my fifth with? How many people get told that? Wow, pretty heavy. How many people wrote that down? See how fast self could go back to self again? Mm-hmm. Interesting, eh? Okay, go ahead.
It may be one of our own family, but we cannot disclose anything to our wives or our parents which will hurt them and make them unhappy.
Underline that. Underline that. Like, you know what? Like, my mom knows, like, I was a piece of work, but I don't tell my mom certain things. She knows all about me, but there's certain things she don't need to know about me. Mm-hmm. See, when my brother knows all about me and still loves, he knows everything about me. You know what? I know everything about him, too. Huh? And that's the beauty, right? And then I have a couple friends that know all about me, my past, right? And they say, oh, you don't need us. Well, I have people in my life that I have confidants with, that I talk to, that know most aspects of me. Like Katie's a sponsee of mine, but there's certain things I wouldn't talk to her about that I would talk to Joe about. And there's certain things I would talk to Joe about that I wouldn't talk. Does that kind of make sense? Right? And there's certain things I just talk to my brother about, and then my sponsor. So I have a few confident people in my life that along spiritual lines. Katie's wondering what it is I wouldn't be able to.
What can you tell Jill you can't tell me? It's because I'm a girl?
Yeah, and that's it. That's what they mean here. Right? Does that kind of make sense? Because sometimes, like, in part of, like, I'll talk to Joe about some of my thinking. I wouldn't tell the people here, because then you start looking at me different. Just because I'm sober doesn't mean there's still a part of my brain that ain't quite right. I know it's hard to believe, but there's still, sometimes my cheese is still trying to sneak away from the cracker and get on a different plate. I try to keep them all associated in the same area, that my cheese and my cracker are on the same plate. That's my job through spiritual principles. The plate is my spiritual life. Absent of that, they're not even in the same facility, right? I'm on the right side of crazy today, so go ahead.
We have no right to save our own skin at another person's expense. Such parts of our story we tell to someone who will understand yet be unaffected.
There was, like, I come from such a background of violence. Another thing that I used to tell my story, I thought in a general way at meetings, people would stop talking to me. And even today, if I tell my story more than a general way, and I do tell my story in a general way, and people are like, stop talking to me. So you can imagine back then. So what I found was somebody who lived the same lifestyle as me, that I told them all those parts about my story. Does that kind of make sense? Okay.
The rule is we must be hard on ourselves, but always considerate of others.
Mark that down. So it's not a selfish program, isn't it? I must be hard on myself and always considerate of others. In regards to what I devolve, the things that I would say that might make them uncomfortable or hurt them, right? Interesting, eh?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Notwithstanding the great necessity for discussing ourselves with someone, it may be one is so situated that there is no suitable person available. If that is so, this step may be postponed. Only, however, if we hold ourselves in complete readiness to go through with it at the first opportunity. We say this because we are very anxious that we talk to the right person.
Because what happens is, if we don't, we're going to drink again. We're not theorizing this is the truth because all the blocks are still there. I'm still stuck on self. I'm still tripping over those things within inside of me that are stumbling blocks or create bondages within inside of me. Right? Those emotional deformities that are stuck on self. Those things that create spiritual angst, right? Resentment is the number one offender. From it stems all forms of spiritual disease. So I have these things, these abscesses on my spirit. Resentments, harms, fears. Right? And I already discussed it with me and God, but I need to bring it to another human being. And that lets out the last bit of attachment to my spirit, that like I call it pus balls, right? Break them and release that poison where I'm not poisoning myself anymore. Because a lot of people don't realize, but if you have an abscess tooth that's causing a problem, it could actually kill you. How many people knew that? Mm-hmm. And that's what they're kind of, they describe it that way. They're poison. We poison. So I need to be free of all this. That's what they're saying. Don't delay. Because a lot of us will feel better by doing a fourth. But that's not the idea. A lot of people think the idea is about feeling better instead of getting better. This is about getting better. Right? Not the delusion created by self that I don't need to continue with this. Because remember, when we formulated that agreement with this power, that I'd be willing to go to any lengths, regardless of my thinking, the continuation of the completion of this. Go ahead.
We say this because we are very anxious that we talk to the right person. It is important that we be able to keep a confidence, that he will be able to keep a confidence, that he fully understand and approve what we are driving at.
Fully understand. So we explain it to him. Look, I'm trying to get a spiritual experience. I'm an alcoholic. I'm on a spiritual path here. I've done a 4-step. I've done most of it. What I really need you to do is just listen and help me navigate through this. Not tell me my family of origin, not connect all these labels to me. That's not your job. Oh, you started the child within and all that. You're not a psychologist. You're not my therapist. You're an observer to the truth. What truth? Is that I'm trying to demonstrate this thing on page 73, and it's going to take everything I got to do this. And what's that? Because I need to learn some humility here. I need to learn some fearlessness, and I need to learn some honesty. And this is going to be the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, and I don't need you creating more blocks or more stumbling. Can you just guide me through this and listen? If we need, could we stop and pray if I get too stumbled on this? Or, you know, if you got good sponsors, they'll share something in their story that you're embarrassed of, and you'll continue on. They're a silent observer to the witness of the completion of this thing. How cool is that? The problem we have in AA, there's too many people start becoming psychologists, start throwing labels on shit, and start making this thing a toxic experience instead of a better one. If you're feeling worse after your fifth, after talking to someone, that's not the point of this thing, is it? Not a family of origin. Here's a list of things to work on. That if you need counseling, you'll discover that later. That's not the person's job who's listening to this. Huh? You have abandonment issues. No, what I have is, I'm not even going to say it. You need somebody who's going to be silent through this, because once they start labeling you, you're going to get embarrassed. You're not going to say nothing no more. Well, if you feel this way about this issue, sure shit, I'm not going to tell you about this other thing. Am I? I better keep that to myself. And without them realizing that they just participated in your demise, and you don't realize it either, because you're back to creating the delusion of self-preservation. Mm-hmm. See how tricky this is? Part of the job is what? I've already admitted to myself. I've already admitted to God, but I need the humility of the witness of another human being. And I need to hear me saying it out loud to this person to be free of this. That's pretty cool. That's what saved my life. Okay, go ahead. Almost compassionate about this stuff, eh?
That he will not try to change our plan, but we
Underline that. Will not try to change your plan. Back when I was people do, let's do a family tree, let's do this, let's only talk about 3 things, you get a rough, that's changing your plan. When they start telling you how to do the 5th step, they've just lost their purpose. If they're a sponsor, their job is to get you through the whole thing. We're prepared for a long talk, their whole life story. Sometimes it take a day, like 4 hours here, 2 hours there. All depends how right you are. Right? Me, I went 100 miles an hour through this thing. It took 4 hours one day and 2 hours with the other person and half an hour with the other person to be free of all of that. And I mean talking like I was on methamphetamine. Like every once in a while, he'd go, breathe, Tony, relax just a second. And I'm sweating because I'm feeling I'm going to be judged. You're going to throw another label on me. You're going to do, right? And so it took everything I had to get through this. Go ahead. This is so cool where we're at here.
But we must not use this as a mere excuse to postpone. When we decide who is to hear our story, we waste no time.
Underline that. We like wasting time. How long have you been on a 4th now? 3 months. Wasting time. How long have you done your 4th? How long ago did you do your 4th? 6 weeks ago. Wasting time. It should be like bing, 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 right through it. Mm-hmm. Right? Go ahead.
When we decide who is to hear our story, we waste no time. We have a written inventory, and we are prepared for a long talk.
Yeah. A long talk. Right? Like you're going to go through your life story now, connecting all the stuff on those pages. You're going to connect it. Right? Go ahead.
We explain to our partner what we are about to do and why we have to do it.
That's twice now. How many people have done a 5th here before and explained to their partner what they're about to do and why? So important because they need to understand what you're doing and the purpose and you need to explain what you need them to do. Their participation in it or their part, right? What you need them to do as a witness to this. Say, hey, can you just do this? Can you help me through this thing? Because I'm explaining what we've just kind of read, and then they're going to explain it again. Go ahead.
He should realize that we are engaged upon a life and death errand.
Underline that. They should realize that we're on a life and death errand. Mm-hmm. That's strong words, right? We know that. How do I know that? Because my step 1 confirms that. Right? There's a difference between admitting we have a problem, like we used to do, and actually doing step 1, isn't there? For those that have done this, by the time we get to page 44, we're doing step 1. We're not admitting we have a problem anymore. It's not a problem. We don't have a problem. I have alcoholism. It's bigger than a problem.
Sure is.
I have an illness that's going to see me dead. That's not a problem. that's the problem I can figure. Problem is a plumbing leak. My toilet's plugged. Well, grab a plunger. Right? That's
okay.
Okay, go ahead. That's a problem.
Here comes the poop talk. Here we go.
I like poop.
Most people approached in this way will be glad to help. They will be honored by our confidence. We pocket our pride and we go to it.
What are we doing? We pocket our pride. Right? And that's confirming the recipe on where? On page that we've learnt enough humility. We understand that we're on a life and death errand. We're learning fearlessness and honesty. Right? The opposite of what they talked about on the previous page, right? We're not on page 73 anymore. We didn't only thought we didn't think, right? We know we're having the experience of going through this. And you're going to be uncomfortable. Right? You're going to have some anxiety. You're going to have some, right? Anybody? Feel like you're going to the electric chair and you're throwing your own switch. You're going to go rat yourself out. Right? Anybody?
Yeah.
It's just like, you haven't showered for 3 weeks. Here's a shower and a bar soap. I don't know if I want to. Get her in the shower. Okay, go ahead.
We pocket our pride and we go to it, illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. Once we have taken this step, withholding nothing. We are
Nothing. Withholding nothing.
Nothing.
And you'll know when you're withholding something. Anybody here? How many people done a bullshit step 5 in the past and kept all the worst items in stock? You know, because when you're leaving the 5th step, your brain's going, hey, you didn't say nothing about this, and we're not gonna. You just go sit over there and behave yourself. You know, you talk to self like that. Anybody here? And the other person say, but, never mind your butts. I'm in charge here. Self has just taken over again. I don't know why I'm not feeling well. Everybody's talking about feeling enlightened. I still feel like shit. Well, you took a shower, but you put on the same clothes. Okay, go ahead. This is about cleaning the inside of the cup, not the outside.
That's
right?
a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can look at the world in the eye. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease.
Wow. Hey? We could be alone at perfect peace and ease. Mm-hmm. We're going to be a couple minutes here, but that you got to experience that. You don't understand it. If you've never experienced it, then you're trying to understand it based on the person who's never experienced it. Once you experience it, you go, holy shit, this is wild. Bill was alarmed by it. Freaked Bill out. Imagine that. Being so at peace and at ease with yourself that you're freaked out by it. Oh my God, there's something wrong. He phoned the doctor. The doctor said, what's the matter? He says, I don't know, I'm feeling really good. Feeling at peace and ease. I don't have a care in the world. The doctors probably think, and that's a problem. Yeah. I think I'm going to die. No, it's kind of like, it's alarming if you've never felt before. It's kind of like, right? And when I did my 5th, I didn't go home where to say, take the book down. I was so exhausted. I went home and went to sleep. I remember I went home. I crawled in the bed, fell asleep, or passed out from exhaustion. And I woke up. I remember waking up in the morning and my eyes weren't awake, but I was awake. And I was kind of aware of how quiet it was. I always woke up to a riot. I always woke up to something screaming inside of me. But it was quiet, and I kind of went, wow, this is weird. And I kind of went, and I heard the traffic going by. I've never heard the traffic go by my place where I lived. I didn't realize you could hear the traffic. And I let in, this little voice went deep down within. That kind of made sense to me. It wasn't from the part that talks to me. It was some part that's been there before in my life. But it kind of just says, hey, you don't need to do that anymore. And I kind of went, what? And I was trying to focus in on where this sound or this voice or this thing was coming from. And I said, what? And they said it again, you don't need to do this anymore. And I kind of was trying to open. And the third time it did it, it was funny. It didn't tell me what I didn't need to do, but I understood what I didn't need to do anymore. The translation was I didn't have to smoke anymore. I leaned over, I grabbed my smokes, and I handed them to my girlfriend at the time. I said, here, you can have these. No withdrawal, no nothing. And for the first time, I got out of bed, and I was able to make the bed without having to make the bed. I just folded the top sheet back over. And that may not sound like much, but I suffer from night tremors. Right? When I would tell people, hey, you know what? Like, we're dating for a while. You're coming over to sleep over. Listen, if I wake up in the middle of the night with night tremors, don't touch me. Don't scream. Don't move. Just say, hey, Tony, you'll be okay. And then I'll snap out of it and I'll come back to bed. I said, are we good? I said, oh, yes, I love you, Tony. I wake up with these tremors. Fighting 5 or 6 people, smashing shit and all that stuff. And then I'd come to. Right? Because of the trauma in my background, right? Screaming and all that. So a little freaky at first for the people I dated, but they kind of go, hey, Tony, time to go to sleep. Like, I don't hurt them. As long as they don't move. Don't move. Don't move. I mean, what a way to have a relationship, right? So that was the last time it was that extreme. I said when God help out, but it was that was available to me. So what does the book say now? We'll finish with this, which is pretty amazing. That what I got there was this thing deep down inside I was able to recognize on a level that made sense to me. The sixth sense, this consciousness within. And it became clear after my fifth. Go ahead.
Our fears fall from us. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but we now begin to have.
We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, understandings, or ideas, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience.
Yeah.
So when I left that, not that night, but that morning when I woke up, for the first time, I had the moment that I was the cause of all my problems. I didn't know that beforehand. Even going through the fourth step, I didn't kind of fully comprehend that because I was pretty ill. Like, I know it's like without getting into it. If you looked at my first fourth step, you'd wonder how I was still sober, because I exhibit a willingness to do these things in spite of the level of disturbance I was experiencing. Because I had some really serious mental health problems from the deterioration that I was experiencing through alcoholism and drug addiction. Like, I'm puking green bile, I'm unemployable, I'm hearing shit, and shit's moving all the time. Like, I'm a danger to myself and everybody around me. They want me to go for a psych assessment, but I think I'm the best thing that ever happened to you. Can I share? If you want what I got. Like, nuts. I'm sponsoring people. Fuck. It's about not putting people in the hospital. If we cannot do that today, it's a good day. You didn't end up in jail today? What a good day. Give yourself a pat on the back. Like, that's pretty crazy, right? But when I got through this, I realized I was the cause of all my problems. But you know what was really cool about that? For the first time, I could do something about it along spiritual lines. I didn't know this. I knew at that moment that my story didn't have to be my story anymore, because I was my story. How many people have been their story here? I'm stuck to my story. I'm this way because of my story. Well, no, I didn't have the opportunity of change. So for the first time here, I realized I was having a new story. I was having the story of Alcoholics Anonymous start in my life. I was having the same experience as those that went around me. And I was having the collective experience, and I was moving into the new freedom and new happiness. That's pretty cool, isn't it? And it's available for all of us if I'm willing to do these things that don't make sense. So I finished this thing, and then what happened? Well, the same thing that happened for them. And what's that, Katie?
The feeling that the drink problem had disappeared will often come quite strongly. We feel we are on the broad highway, walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. Returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour. Carefully reviewing what we have done, we thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know Him better. Taking this book down from our shelf, we turn to the page which contains the 12 steps.
Which I did the next day, right? Good.
Carefully reading the first 5 proposals, we ask if we have omitted anything.
Omitted anything, meaning, did you bullshit or leave stuff out? And you'll know. How many people know? Yeah. Because that's in your fourth. These things just come up. So you'll know the stuff that you should have talked about. They're saying this is your opportunity to talk about it, because if you created a block, that block is going to turn into a wall, and that wall's going to turn into your demise. So you'll know, because your consciousness will tell you, look, you should be talking about this. You should have brought this up. Okay, go ahead.
For we're building an arch through which we shall walk a free man at last.
Last time they talked about that was on page 62. Was an idea. Now we have the arch. What's the arch? To move from a Neanderthal experience to a spiritual experience. To move from the conflict that resides in me to the room that is, I don't know how else to call it, just the waiting room. I call it the room with the light in it. Right? The peace. You know that part of you that experiences peace? How many people know that part? And then there's a piece of you that is conflict. Now you have the means of moving from one experience inside of you to the other. On spiritual line, you pass through the archway. The archway is this thing within inside of you that moves you from a Neanderthal experience into a spiritual experience. You have the recipe to do that now. How cool is that? How many people find that cool? Didn't say you do that all the time, though, does it? Because a lot of us are very still self-reliant, aren't we? Because we're just started this thing. You still got you stuck on you, but now you know it. Now you know what everybody else knows. And the beauty is you can do something about it now. How cool is that? And you're not alone anymore, right? You're not alone. You're not unsupervised. You now have something with you. This connection that's always been with you, right? You're not going through this alone anymore. Man, that's pretty amazing stuff. That you don't have to spend the time talking with you all day long, eh? How much better of a conversation is that going to be? Because we know how the conversation goes when you talk to you all day, don't we? We'll just leave that alone. Now we're going to bring something greater than us into this. May the force be with you. Live long and prosperous. I love this part of the book. God bless you. Thank you so much, Katie, Rob. You guys are awesome.
Thanks, Rob.
Recording stopped.
Thanks very much, Tony and Katie. And don't